for a long time, I really struggled because I always thought there was one perfect way to bat.
Then when you eventually did get your contract, obviously you're now a professional cricketer, playing the Queensland team. For any youngster looking on, can you give a little bit of advice via your own personal journey? What kind of stuff that were you doing through your career which led you to success? Marnus Labuschagne, now a professional cricketer. As I said, a lot of people want to make that step up. Any advice you would give? Some tips for youngsters looking on?
I think one of the things for me is probably the best advice I got. It's just to not be rigid in your thinking and actually be adaptable and be open to thinking about the game and how to go about the game. I think for a long time, I really struggled because I always thought there was one perfect way to bat, and I was always aspiring to be that perfect batter. If that was trying to bat like Sachin Tendulkar, with a perfect backlift, or Virat Kohli or whoever it was, Jacques Kallis or Rahul Dravid, those, you always wanted to bat with a perfect technique. And that's where I probably struggled a bit because I tried for probably 4 or 5 years, even in first class cricket, trying to do that. I kept trying to bat with a perfect technique and the perfect this and that. And probably only in the last 2 years, probably, I've really just my thinking of trying to be a run scorer, finding ways to score runs and being able to adapt my batting or my technique or whatever it is to suit the conditions and to go, okay, well, I can bat like this today. I can have this backlift or this grip or this, I can do this today and then I can do something different tomorrow.
Does that ability to adapt, would that be fair to say?
Yeah, exactly. But I think it's more than that for I think kids growing up, because I think when you're a kid growing up, you're always, I know I did as a kid, you're always aspiring for that one person you want to bat like, so if it's, who's, if it's Steve Smith, his favorite player is Mark Waugh, you're always, gonna, you take elements of that person's game in upon your own game as a kid because you're like, oh, I love batting like that person. Same as you watch now and you watch kids bat now and they're trying to bat like Steve Smith. So I think that's the element that as a kid you always pick up. And I think sometimes you try really hard to bat like that person. You try and do it that way. As a kid, I wanted to bat like Jacques Kallis. So, I had my elbow up and whatnot and, the big pre-movement and, it's different stages. I loved watching Sachin and the way he batted. So, I think you got to find your own way and the way you bat. There's definitely elements of the game that are definitely made easier if you do the technical things right. But, it's definitely those things about, not trying to get too caught up and trying to bat like someone, trying to bat like yourself.
And then is there also an element about enjoying the game and not kind of being stifled in terms of wanting it too much as a youngster, trying to make the next step? A word on that, maybe?
Yeah, look, I know exactly what you're saying. It's very hard because, when you were a youngster, all I wanted was to make that rep team, to make that under 19 team, to make that team. That's all you wanted for that. That part then, making the under 19s Queensland team or Australian team meant everything to you at that stage in your life. Now you look at it big picture now where I am sitting now and you look back and you go, well, that didn't really matter. Like if I didn't make it or if I didn't make it, it wouldn't have had an outcome in where I am today. But I think you also need to learn as a kid setbacks and need to learn how to come back from failure, because I think that's one thing for sure. When you come into first class cricket, doesn't matter who you are or how good you are, you're going to need to learn to come back from that, because if you don't, you're going to get caught out.
say you're going through a lean spell, not getting the big score that you expect. Any tips for aspiring cricketers, current players, etc.? What kind of things do you do to get yourself out of a mini rut, etc.? Do you have processes that you go through, etc., to kind of kick yourself back into form? If that's if that's even if there's actually a blueprint, is there a blueprint that you try and follow?
I think every batter knows that's played for long enough knows that the game can be very challenging sometimes. That the game can put you in a position where you'll start doubting yourself. The key is to just keep making sure you keep the game process driven, not results driven, and that's very hard because we all walk out there every day and we go, I want to get 100 today, and then the problem is in our game, everything under 100's a fail. So you go out there and okay, well, I'm going to fail today. Instead of taking it more as a process and going, well, doesn't matter how many runs I get today, but am I staying true to the way I want to play and what I want to do? Am I reading the game? Am I understanding what's going on right now? Am I understanding what shots I can and can't play? Am I understanding where I want to hit this ball, what I want to do to this bowler? And then just playing that, you're not, and that's probably the biggest thing I've learned. I've learned to play less at my end and more at the other end. So instead of me trying to think about what I'm doing as a batter, I'm thinking about what the bowler's doing and then trying to maybe change what I'm doing to adapt to what he's doing. Where probably, if you asked me this 2 years ago, all the focus was on me. I was like, I've got to do this I've got to do this, I've got to do that, I've got to do that. And then I'd get out and I go, well, but he was doing this. I knew what he was doing. I had the vision 2 or 3 days before I was watching them bowl and I knew that's what he was doing. Why didn't I come up with a better plan? So I think that's probably the part where I would say that just, learning from the game and being able to play what's in front of you, not just trying to be, a technician and try and make sure you're doing things right all the time.
Would it be fair to say that, you hear a lot of commentators say that, a batsman's mind is scrambled. Is that kind of what you're saying in terms of like you try and overthink your own game as opposed to concentrating what's coming down in front of you? So would that be
100%? Yeah, that's a very good sum up. Yeah, that's exactly it. And as a batter, when you're at that stage, you're thinking so much at your end. You're all about, oh, geez, he's bowling like this. Okay, I'm going to do this, that, and then, you get yourself into trouble. Where that's where I would say that, you're spot on. It's a really good sum up.
In terms of the mental side of the game, a lot of talk is about technical side, etc. But do you do any kind of work on your mental preparation? Do you do breathing exercises, visualization? What kind of stuff do you do in terms of that training that aspect of the game?
Well, I'll answer that question firstly. It's a weird thing to say, but I didn't feel the pressure in that game, or not a lot of it at least. I mean, all the pressure I felt was probably more viewed from the outside in. It was more external pressure that people were going, how, this is a tough situation. But in my mind, this is the way I thought about it. Well, coming in for Steve Smith, he averages 65. People aren't expecting me to set the world on fire. I've come in here in probably the toughest time to bat. So either way, if I succeed, people are going to go, wow, that was very good. And if I fail, people are going to go, well, you probably can't judge him on that innings. So in my mind, I thought about that. Once again, I'm probably an overthinker of the game. So I actually took that opportunity and said, righto, well, I can, play with freedom, because I'm playing the way I want to play. And I got in the contest. Obviously, when I got out there, there was pressure. They were bowling well. Jofra was bowling fast. But that sort of takes care of itself as long as you have, those mental routines. You have your routine set. And that's why you need a routine. And you need different things to do when you're under pressure, and understanding what you need to do to make sure it brings you back to the neutral, brings you back to the now, and it gives you an
Talk through
understanding
that
of.
routine that you mentioned.
Yep. So I do a different routine for different situations. So my probably more normal one is when the ball's bowled, I walk probably more when I'm under pressure. I would walk to sort of 45 backwards from the stumps, make a little mark on the ground, then walk back, scratch middle twice, um, tap the bat, uh, tap the bat twice, and then tap the bat one more time, 3 times, and then sort of bend my knees a little bit as I bring the bat up to just relax my knees a little bit, and then have my hands in the right position, and then from there, that's sort of the routine part of it done. And then different times. So when I'm feeling like I'm going really well, I won't walk to 45. I'll then do some gardening on the pitch, or do different things. But
Before
when
you're
I
going
need to
out
go,
to bat, before you're going out to bat, do you do anything to kind of calm the nerves? And does your preparation from the mental side change from, say, like the beginning of test week to that point when you're just about to actually walk out, or do you always have?
I think whenever you're coming up against a big test, you always, this is just me, but you're always thinking about the bowlers. You're thinking about the bowlers, what they bowl, how you're going to play them, what you're going to do. I think, whenever I have spare time, I'm not consciously standing there, trying to envision it, but it's in there the whole time. It's ticking over, playing left arm spin. Where am I going to bat? What am I going to do? Playing Jofra Archer, where he's angling the ball back at your pad, playing broad, coming wide of the crease, angling it in, playing Wokes, who's angling it away, bowling probably more back of it. Like those things are just churning away in your mind. And subconsciously at training, you're working at ways to figure those things out. Yeah, so I think that's the part that the mentally. So when you're sitting there waiting, you're just picking up that information by looking at the TV. You're going, yep, okay, that's doing that. Okay, yep, he's swinging it away, he's angling it back in, or whatever it is. And you're just gaining that information. So when you go out there, that you're ready to go.
And then in that series, Headingley, there's a lot said about Ben Stokes and his antics with the bat, but I want to pick up that spell that he bowled to you. I know you got 70 odd in tough conditions. How was that as a spell? And also, to mention Headingley is known in England. It swings around a lot. A few tips about actual playing swing bowling. A lot of people say see it early and play it late. If you can go a little bit deeper in your thought process about playing swing bowling.
What do I have for you? Probably two things. I actually say still to this day, it's probably one of the best spells of bowling I've ever faced. That second innings, I remember me and Matthew Wade coming into the middle, and we're batting for probably half an hour, or an hour, maybe even. It felt forever, and he was bowling, and we were just like, mate, this is unplayable. Like we're just hanging, just hanging, and we're taking it over at a time, a ball at a time. And you remember saying that, walking or talking there, and going, he was bowling balls that were just unplayable. He was bowling fast. He was angling the ball in at you. I think I nicked off twice, got dropped a few times. And I remember that was one of the best spells I'd faced. And I'd probably say prior to that, that first innings at Headingley, I would count as my best test innings I've ever played. The 74 out of the 190 we got. Just because it was one of those days where I just felt like the conditions were tough, but in my own mind, where I was at mentally and watching the ball, it was very clear. I was very focused on, I was so focused on the ball. I actually felt like it was really hard to get me out. I felt like, I got to a stage. That's why I was so filthy when I got out to the full toss, because I actually felt like out of most innings that I've played, that innings, I was like, I don't think they can get me out here. I remember like thinking that. I was like, I feel so, wherever they're bowling, I feel like I almost like you said, seeing the ball real early. And you don't always have that. Different light, the sun's in a different spot, whatever it is. The ball's not always as easy to see. Tips on swing bowling. Probably one of the biggest things I learned over in England was swing bowling is probably to play with the angle of the swing. So like, I think as batters, we always get caught up in trying to play real straight, trying to play the ball back down the ground. And I think actually in England, you have to play the ball a bit squarer. You have to hit the ball more, through cover, through extra cover, with the angle of the swing if it's an outswinger, and then obviously the opposite way. If he's bowling in swing, you don't want to hit the ball down the ground. You want to hit the ball sort of to mid-wicket or to square leg with the angle of the swing.
Would you also look to kind of bat outside your crease? And a lot of people say you've got to watch the ball out the hand in terms of which way it's shined, but it's easier said than done. That do you look for a little tip like that, or angle of wrist
100%.
position, arm position, etc.? Does that come into your thought process?
100%, yeah. So subconsciously, you're always picking up little cues. So you're looking for the ball, you see the seam. I'm always looking for the seam, see if I can see the angle of the seam, where the seam's bouncing, where it's actually bouncing on the seam, seeing if I can, pick up any cues that's going to help me. But once again, that's so dictated to by light. Some days, I remember that day, because it was overcast, the ball was actually quite clear to see with a new ball because it was shiny, but it was quite dusky look. Sometimes when it's really bright, the ball doesn't really reflect that well with the sun. So I remember that day, I found it like I saw the ball real early and the swing and the seam. And I almost felt like as it came out of his hand, I knew what shot I wanted to play already. So I think any cues you can pick up as you're running in. Sometimes it's really hard to sort of, I try and watch the ball maybe early when he's running up to see if I can pick up any cues, wrist position, wrist angle, shiny side, rough side, depending on if it's reversing. And then the next point I'm sort of looking at is more delivery. So where the ball actually goes. I subconsciously don't think I try and watch the ball, through that part. I think I try and watch the ball here, and then I try and then switch my focus to release point.
And then would you ever look to bat outside your crease, change guard? Would you ever?
100%. Yeah, all the time. Yeah, all the time. Just depending on what the bowler's doing, what the ball's doing, and then just trying to play the numbers game really. So yeah, if Muhammad Abbas is coming in and he's trying to bowl straight and hit me on the pad, I know his mode of dismissal is LBW. So, you're batting out of your crease to try and eliminate that and put a bit of pressure back on him to say, well, how are you going to get me out now? Because LBW is almost out of the equation. So you just keep shifting the statistics of the game into your favour.